You are listening to Hit Play, Not Pause, a feisty menopause podcast for active, performance-minded women. I am your host, Celine Yeager. Each week, I bring you advice from athletes, scientists, researchers, and other experts to help you feel and perform your best, no matter what your hormones are doing. This show is a production of Live Feisty Media. Hello, strong, feisty women. Welcome to Hit Play Not Pause, the podcast that is on a mission to help women not get so blindsided by perimenopause they fear that they're dying. And seriously, it sounds like hyperbole, but one of the issues that comes up a lot on the show and in the menopause universe at large is women literally saying, I thought I was dying, when they were suffering from, let's say, heart palpitations brought on by perimenopause, or when they're experiencing any number of symptoms that can leave you worried that something is gravely wrong with you. Which is exactly what happened to this week's guest, Marissa Axell, who is an elite bike racer, cycling coach, and founder of AXN Fitness and Coaching, who, out of nowhere, started experiencing such bone-crushing, soul-sucking fatigue, she went to her doctor fearing that she had cancer. Which she didn't. She had perimenopause. Blindsided, Marissa decided that she wanted to devote her practice to helping women just like her, 40 plus active women who want to understand what's happening and still want to crush their active and athletic goals. Sounds familiar. So she took a dive into all things training during perimenopause and started programming for 40 plus women specifically. Through her cycling success system, Marissa focuses on proper fueling, strength development, and smart exercise programming so women can climb hills stronger, ride farther, and at faster average speeds, and really just have the energy to do it day after day. And we talk about it all this week. And whether or not you're a cyclist, this just applies to all active women across the board. You can learn more about Marissa and her practice at axnfitnessandcoaching.com. I will put a link in the show notes to make that easy to find. Also, in this conversation, she talks about finding a PMS prescription in Roar, the book that I helped Dr. Stacy Sims write. And she talks about how that literally saved her life. And the advice that she is referring to is the recommendation to ingest 3 to 5 grams of essential amino acids before exercise to help fight that lack of mojo and low energy, the stuff that Marissa was experiencing. There's been some interesting work in that area, so I will drop a link or two in the show notes for you to check out on that as well. All right, before we get to it, give us a follow at Feisty Menopause on Instagram and Facebook. Come on over and join our private Hit Play Not Pause Facebook group and go into those show notes and click on the link to sign up for my free weekly Feisty 40 Plus newsletter with all the training news you can use. Thank you, as always, for the continued 5-star ratings and great reviews. If you like the show, please share it with a friend. It helps us continue to grow. Finally, very quick thanks to Heddas for their continued support of this show. If you're looking for a running shoe by women, specifically designed for women, head into those show notes and check out Heddas as well. All right, enough of me. Let's have a few words about our awesome sponsors and get on with the show. All right, Marissa, welcome to Hit Play Not Pause.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I thought we'd start. I know you run programs for women in this demographic. You're a cyclist yourself. Want to set the stage a little bit. What is your history as both an athlete and a coach?
Well, I started as a swimmer through college as a collegiate swimmer, and as most swimmers turn into triathletes, and that's how I discovered the bike, and I got obsessed. I did 2 Ironmans, and oh my gosh, 20 years ago now, and decided I'm tired of going long. I want to go fast, and that's how I really got involved in road cycling. I dabbled in randonneeing here and there, but I really started in 2006, 2007, doing some cyclocross. That's a great crossover sport between triathlon and cycling. It is super fun. And
I am familiar.
Yeah, I fell in love with cycling. So that is how I got into cycling. And that was 2006 6 or 7. And then went through the USA Cycling like category 4. That's what they were back then. And in Northern California, we just have a really thriving road cycling situation. So my most recent amount of coaching, like that is really my background. Was I became a cyclist, and because I'd had swim coaching and triathlon coaching background, I got really like obsessed with helping my friends get faster. But this was all when I was in my 20s, right? So fast forward, I'm now starting my 18th season of racing. So
Wow.
yeah, I'm still racing, a competitive athlete. I've shifted focus from like road, could talk about that later, to more velodrome and track racing. It's
Oh,
kind of
wow. Okay.
more my passion right now, but I still race criteriums, and the occasional time trial. And yeah, that's kind of where I landed. I started as a beginner, and I am such a goal-oriented person. I moved up to my last time I got to upgrade to a category 1, I think it was in like 2012 or 2013. So just been racing at that level for that long. So I called it semi-professional because I didn't get paid to race, but I raced with the professional women. And
I understand.
I had an amazing time being middle of the pack or back of the pack, racing, but racing those national level races, the Redlands, the Cascade Classics, all of those. So I've kind of seen from the beginner level all the way through the professional level, and realizing that I didn't have what it takes.
What track are you on?
Right now, the velodrome close to us is called Hellier Velodrome, and then I do drive a couple of times a year to go race at Carson in LA. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I'm right by the Trexertown
Oh,
Velodrome.
so cool. One of these days, I'm going to Trexler Town, one of these days.
Yeah, yeah, let me know if you do. I literally am I'm 8 miles away from it. I'm very close to it.
Awesome. It has been such a breath of fresh air. I know it seems very niche, but for for where I am in my life, and like also my like what I love to do, even as a swimmer, like I loved the short course things. I've just really like been rejuvenated by getting to do the track. It's super fun.
Yeah, it's funny. We have a number of women in the community who have started track racing. And sometimes it's, there was a woman who was struggling with menopausal weight gain and she has literally tried everything. She's been on the GP, the GLP agonist, the drugs, all of the things. And she because the track is pretty forgiving of, it's just power.
Yeah.
So she started track racing and she loves it. And I'm like, this is so great.
It really is. And I was gonna bring that up later, but like it really fits kind of our, I would say general, and I'm generalizing, but our profile now where it's got a lot of sprinting, right? A lot of
Yep.
repeated
Yeah.
hundreds. A lot of the type of training is super beneficial for women over 40.
Yeah, yeah, super, super cool. So let's talk a bit about your own evolution. How old are you now?
46, racing age 47. So yeah.
So ridiculous.
I
And in
know.
cyclocross, you're 52. I
I
always
know.
like I would just be like, what is my racing age? Like this
Where
doesn't
am
even make
I?
sense.
I know. And then you throw COVID in there and I'm like, I'm still 39 or 40, or I don't even know.
Right, those years are just compressed into
Totally.
one big blob. So talk about what you started experiencing, because I did a little homework and it seemed like you started experiencing some symptoms in like 2019
Mhm.
and how you address that.
Yeah, so I was just around 20, I'm sorry, it was 2019. I was around 40, 41 to 42, right in there. And what happened was a confluence of events. So I was really burnt out from my job. I had helped kind of open a indoor cycling studio. I was working, kind of burning the candle at both ends, if you will. So I was 6 a.m. spin instructor,
Mm.
doing 3 to 5 classes a day, teaching them. Um, Doing strength training, with those as well. So a little bit of like context, right? And then there
Yeah.
were days where I got on the bike and I was like, I'll be fine. I'll wake up on the bike. And I just could not wake up. And I slept 9 hours and I felt like I could sleep 3 or 4 more. And that was just so unusual for me. I was very much a go getter, go, go, go. I'll sleep when I'm dead type of person. So this stopped me in my tracks. And I was still training for the road. I was doing stage races and I could not even throw my leg over the bike, let alone try to work, right? So all my energy was like, get to work, get through the day, you know, I had already made sure that I was eating enough because that was a whole thing before that. I was eating enough, but it was this bone tired fatigue I'd never had before. So then I thought, well, maybe I have cancer. Like, so I went to the doctor, right? Because
Sorry.
I
I'm
never felt
sorry, I didn't see that coming.
I know, right? Maybe I have cancer, maybe I'm really sick. So I went to the
Yeah.
doctor and of course they're like, "You're fine. Everything comes back fine. Nothing's wrong with you." And I was like, "There's something wrong with me. This is unusual." And so obviously I'd already had the book Roar and I was reading through it again for some other reason and came upon the PMS prescription that literally saved my life. So I was like, this is what I am struggling with is this fatigue. And the story in that book was about that you guys wrote was about like a mother and a daughter like were training triathlon together and they're struggling with PMS symptoms. And I was like, you know what? I got nothing to lose. I'm gonna try this. And literally it was the BCAAs, I'm pretty sure that gave me like the hit is that central nervous system fatigue that if nobody, it's hard to explain to someone who has never had that fatigue before, but it just feels like your bones are empty. Like there's just nothing. So I did that prescription that is in the book and within a day, I was my normal self. So
Wow.
I was shocked. And maybe it's really working, maybe it's some like placebo effect, but I was like blown away. So as I was like, I need to know like this is coming around my cycle. I need to track my cycle. And that's right around when like Wild AI came out. So I was using that to track my cycle. And so as I would get like 7 days before my cycle was supposed to happen, I would be like, heads up if you have the fatigue, you know. So I was just managing it that way. And it was that was the big aha moment for me. It was like, oh shit, this is perimenopause. And why didn't anybody tell me about this? Like my cycling coach was a woman who was over 40. She was going to be about 50. Like, why didn't she tell me about this? And my other cycling friends were all about my age, I mean, and we were all like blindsided. So that's where I got really interested in like, why the hell doesn't anybody know about this? I mean, you guys had written the book Roar and it was mentioned, but like my cycling crew, like nobody knew about it. So that's where I got really obsessed with like, we need to spread the word. And that was
And that's why we did Next Level, frankly, because we were like, "Oh, one chapter on menopause, maybe not enough."
totally, totally. And that just like blew my doors off, but I could train again. I was able to sleep again, right? It just really helped me right size and get back to myself. And that's where it all started. That's when obviously like again the confluence of events, COVID hit pretty soon after that and I was no longer at this studio. I had resigned because I was completely burned out. But I was again just like this nagging thing of like nobody's doing anything about this. And I was able to take the Menopause for Athletes course from Dr. Stacy Sims. And then it all just kind of started like falling together, like my obsession with it, because I wanted to continue to race and ride fast. And then I wanted to help my friends, you know, and help my clients. And that was kind of how it got started. The other things I did to address it were like eating more protein because I really wasn't like I was eating enough, but I really wasn't adhering to like you need to eat, you know, basically a gram of protein per pound of body weight. And I really wasn't taking that seriously until this fatigue started happening. And I have tried, I mean, with pretty good success to really make sure I'm eating enough protein daily. And that has made a wild difference as well, to the point where now I don't get that fatigue as often. Like I still will get it, but it is definitely managed through more protein, probably sleeping more consistently, but then also really when I get stuck, relying on that like PMS prescription.
So where are you now? Do you feel like you're later perimenopause? Like, where do you feel like you are in the whole transition now?
Deeper menopause, definitely more I mean, like, not in menopause yet, but definitely the deeper into perimenopause. So,
Yeah.
getting the hot flashes, definitely getting the sleep challenges, and, um but honestly, those so far, like, knock on wood, have been the big, symptoms, but I because the more the feisty menopause people are around, like, the more I get to learn, the more I'm just really trying to see how I can apply things that will be helpful to my life as an athlete and then to also my extension, my athletes' lives. So, but for now, I would say I'm definitely like deep into perimenopause, not on HRT.
Okay.
And I haven't felt like my symptoms have been disruptive enough or consistent enough to feel like I need, but I'm definitely like that would be probably my next step once things maybe get worse.
Yeah, I mean, and, as you know, like, I'm always like, "You don't need to suffer." So if you feel like it's disruptive at all, I mean, I think it's worth exploring. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I basically when I stopped drinking much red wine, I stopped having a lot of hot flashes. So that
There's a
really has
connection
been
there for
helpful.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, which I learned about. So that has been helpful. But I'm also like following that through line that you and everybody have been like showing us. So I've been
Yeah.
really grateful for that.
So did you change your training in any other meaningful way? Have you always lifted? Or are
So
you lifting now?
I am definitely lifting now. Yeah. So I would say yes. As a teenager, I lifted. We were a swim team, like you're in the gym. College, same thing. And then I didn't lift for probably 15 years. And then around 35, the age 35, I just heard like, oh, you need to start lifting weights at 35 because you start losing muscle mass. And like as a personal trainer, I knew that. But I was like, I'm 35, right? But I'd always been somewhat muscular and not really an issue in terms of losing muscle. So I really made sure to start lifting at 35, but I was kind of in and out. I've been lifting dedicatedly though since 2019. So that's like going on 6 years. And I want to say prior to 2019, lifting was like in the off season, sporadic. Did a couple plyometrics and I lifted when it was convenient at the gym. So definitely not on a program. Now for the last 5 years, it's been on a program, like programmed. We focus on heavy lifting, of course, but we also go through like a little bit of hypertrophy and then a lot of heavy lifting, and then plyometrics and power as well, because that really relates to track cycling,
Yeah.
especially. So I have definitely welcomed more time in the gym, less time on the bike for overall mental well being as well as the physical well being. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. I follow a very similar trajectory where I was like, lifting. And then I was like, oh, I must. I
Yeah.
could, yeah.
And I think too with that, it's like my desires maybe shifted a bit, whether that was, just because I was tired of, I mean, at that point I'd been racing 15 years on the road scene and I wasn't getting any younger, if you know what I mean. Like I was kind of over putting myself in dangerous situations and criteriums with like 19-year-olds. So no offense to all you amazing cyclists out there, but I was just like, my sense of self-preservation was stronger than my desire to win. So I just decided like, hey, I want to shift focus and let's try a different thing. And that
Yeah.
necessitated then a change in training for weightlifting, of course, but more sprint training. And I don't
Yep.
spend really more than 3 or 3.5 hours on a long ride anymore. Unless I'm going to be doing like, I will be doing a gravel ride coming up that is longer. So I'm going to be specifically training for that. But overall, I've gone away from those like 4 days getting in 16 hours, that sort of thing. And I would say mentally, that has helped a lot as well. Just like staying mentally fresh, less fatigued, and being able to perform in my training. It's been great.
Yeah. So let's talk about your programs because you've put together some programs for 40 plus cyclists. And I'm curious like what some of the fundamentals are and if you can share some success stories with us.
I love talking. I love talking about my athletes. They're my favorite. So I really, like I said, I was really obsessed with like spreading the word because there's so much misinformation out there, and I so appreciate like the movement that has happened. I feel like again a happy circumstance of like I'm here now. So I've been able to talk online with like hundreds of women about if you're struggling with cycling, like let's talk. So I really put together essentially a 12-week cycling training program that is what I would say is like I'm gonna say the best way to get specific I want to say not just goals but specific outcomes towards your event, whatever that is. So if you're doing a gravel event or if you're doing a climb heavy event or if you're doing just a century, right? Or not just but a century.
Yeah, it's 100 miles.
Yeah, it's 100 bucks. But I really focus on the fundamentals of strength training and cycling training, right? Everybody knows how to train, but it turns out I would say most people, especially women over 40, are not so good at the other two fundamentals, which are backing up that training with fueling and it essentially eating the right foods for them at the right time so that we're keeping muscle on our body, we're keeping energy stores full so we can do it again tomorrow. And then the third kind of thing after that training and fueling is, of course, focusing on recovery. And that is so fundamental to getting stronger, to getting faster, to hitting your targets in training. And that, I shouldn't say surprisingly, because I probably fall in this demographic too, but that is the hardest part, is to get people to let go and rest more. So I love learning about kind of the psychology of all these high performance athletes who are now in their 40s and 50s and 60s, and they just grew up at a time where you didn't rest. So it has been super exciting to help teach a little bit more about what you can do to like activate that parasympathetic nervous system. I think of like your rest. I have kind of a menu that they'll choose from. It's just like you have to work out your rest, right? Like pick one thing on this list that you're going to do. So it feels like a workout, like they're being specific, but it is a activation for their parasympathetic nervous system. So something like,
What is that list? I like that idea.
yeah, I have a little menu. I add to it probably every couple of weeks, but anything from, uh, you know, do a 10-minute meditation on an app, right? Go for a walk in nature, but your heart rate needs to stay at heart rate zone 1 or below. You could go for a ride, but your heart rate needs to stay at heart rate zone 1 or below. Um, Go for an easy swim. Go for a picnic in nature and just like looking at the view, right? Because there's all these studies from like green bathing out of Japan that show you can really decrease your stress hormones. Um, my favorite new one, of course, gentle yoga, where you're just focusing on breath work and gentle stretching. Super great, because that kind of hits that mobility a little bit as well. And my newest favorite is yoga nidra, just laying in bed listening to kind of yoga for the mind. So it's a little bit of meditation and really helps me decrease and really get relaxed, decrease stress. So that's just a smattering of ideas. I have clients all the time are like, well, would I really like to do this? I'm like, that's perfect. Let's add it to the list. It's just a growing living list. Yeah. But I've really made sure that in general, people are taking 2 recovery days, sometimes and then in the recovery week, sometimes 3 recovery days. Of course, it's individual depending on their what their goal is, right? So, that's the 3 fundamentals, the really like that framework that I work with. And then in addition to that, we really focus on things that you can control, like, putting your training, like, into your schedule, and then making sure that it works for you and you're not, like, adding another thing on your chore list, right? So it's talking about like setting aside your self-care time essentially, which is another new challenge for a lot of folks, right? Um, yeah, so that is kind of how I really stepwise work with people. And I make sure that we cover the basics first, right? Everybody, again, I don't have to tell people about training, they know how to do that, but it's the recovery and the fueling that we work on day in and day out.
Yeah, I've a couple thoughts there. It's funny because when I was training for a 70.3 2 summers ago,
Yeah.
I had my coach and, I'd go through training peaks like many of us do, and there would always be a day with a I called it like sofa yoga. It was I don't remember what exactly it was, but it was on my plan and it literally I followed a video and I would be laying on the floor with cushions and a blanket and just laying there. And my husband would come in and be like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm doing my workout today." And I was literally just like lying there with my feet up. But we like to tick those boxes green, and I would do
Mhm.
it and it would tick the box green. So it does feed that sort of I want to still be doing something that is working towards my goal, and it satisfies that mental urge to tick a box.
It really does, yeah, and it helps teach if you maybe don't have the background in, like, physical education, like, you actually get stronger and faster when you're resting, right? So,
Yeah.
helping teach everyone a little bit more about that can help you throughout the rest of your life, I would hope. So,
What does the training look like as far as like if you're taking a week, if somebody's doing, gravel rides, gravel races are super popular. So if you're taking something like 100 miles, like how are you breaking that down for them over the course of a week as far as like where their intensity comes in and where they start doing sort of like building that foundation?
yeah, so I love the beginning, I really liked establishing the habit. So, I kind of the first 2 weeks, I'm like, "Just show up." Just show up and get started, even if you don't finish it. So, do you want me to can I go through, like, day by day? Does that kind of
Sure.
work?
Yeah, go
Alright,
for it.
so, a typical week could look like this, like, a Monday would be a recovery day where we're doing the yoga for that. Tuesday might be, a lift session followed by, cadence drills, like, so we're not super high intensity, but we're focused on a skill.
Yep.
Then Wednesday, I like to do a little warm up, plyometrics, very short, followed by like a high intensity interval session. Maybe that's like 30-second on, 30-second off, couple of sets of, 4 or 5 minutes. I mean, obviously it's going to depend on the person and how much history they have in cycling. So,
Totally.
for anyone listening to this, like, take
Yeah.
that. But, yeah. And then, maybe some stretching in the evening. Then Thursday might be again another lifting session followed by an easy spin. So, nothing, I really love spinning after lifting because I really believe it helps decrease the DOMS that people might get, and it just is a little bit more time focused on your form. And for so many people, it's kind of the skill of cycling that they're missing out. Like their heartbeat is great, right? Their threshold is amazing, but the skills are really have a lot of room to grow. And when you get faster, or I want to say better at more efficiency on your pedaling, you're going to go faster without
Yep.
losing weight, without getting stronger. You're just focused on your skills. So I spend that during the week. I try to keep things really at an hour or less overall. And depending on people's schedules, but most of us really just want to be in and out and done. And then Friday, maybe another recovery day. And that would lead us into the weekend. So right now, it's winter. So we're doing in depending on your goal. But if you have an early spring, let's say metric, 60 to 100-mile gravel ride, you're going to be doing some sessions. I really like to split them up just because the latest and the greatest data, not a lot on women, but it's still really interesting data coming out of like the what is the Norwegian method, but we're talking
Yeah.
about like splitting up your long ride. So I really do not philosophically believe in riding a trainer more than 90 minutes. So, but
Oh,
I
I hear
do
you.
like to do a 90-minute ride in the morning, followed up by an hour or 90 minutes in the evening. And you're going to actually maybe they're showing data from these couple of studies recently that show that even though you're only riding 3 hours together, you're actually eliciting benefits of doing like a 6 hour ride. And nobody should be doing 6 hours like slaving away on their trainer. I just am like, don't do it. It's so bad for your nether regions. It can be terrible for overuse injuries. So I'm a big fan of, if again we're getting close to your goal, we're needing to add some volume. We're doing a 1 hour or 90 minutes in the morning, 1 hour or 90 minutes in the evening. And that might be your tempo or sweet spot, followed up by an endurance ride. And then on the other day, if you're in the snow regions, like go do your skiing, go get outside, like enjoy the weather. If you're not, or if you're in the southern regions where it's warm, they're going outside and just doing a group ride that is appropriate for them, meaning they're not killing themselves in zone 5 for 5 hours. But having the social aspect is so important, especially now as we talk about like being loneliness being a problem, connectedness being important, right? So I really try to focus and shine a light on that, um, at least once a week, if not more. So that's kind of a generic week, if you will. And if you're getting towards like 60 to 100-mile gravel ride, you're maybe doing two of those kind of split up rides on the weekends. And then I'd actually like to even I'll give an example of, um, shifting keeping my front end of the week the same, but then shifting that back end of the week to doing some 3 days in a row. So we're adding that endurance, but we're not. I always say like you don't practice the 200 butterfly by doing 200 butterflies. Like it's exhausting. So you don't practice a 100-mile gravel ride by doing 100-mile gravel rides, but we do a specific overload, building that endurance, building those skills, and making sure that it's fun because none of us are getting paid to do that. So,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, that looks a lot like what I'm doing. I'm training for a 30K ultra that's coming up
yes.
now, but it's the same
Amazing.
kind of thing. Yeah, it's the same kind of thing though. It's like I'm not going out to run 20 miles, on the trails. I'm doing kind of what you're saying. Like I have a longish run on a Saturday, but then the next day I have a run plus a hike back to back. That just like time on the feet. There's a lot of, or on Thursday I'll have a heavy lift followed by an easy run. It just a lot of that piggybacking things and splitting it up just to get the volume without wearing you down.
100%. And, like, I found too that adding the lifting really it's almost like a shortcut to building resistance to fatigue. It's
Yep.
just phenomenal. So, yeah, you don't I really believe strongly, like, what I learned again in Menopause 2.0, like, Menopause for Athletes, Menopause 2.0 was just so much, like, the balance and really polarizing the training, which I'm sure you're feeling that as well. Like, it is so much better for the body and and the mind overall. I've seen injuries lessen, right? I've seen the will or the desire go up or stay steady. So yeah, I'm a big fan of kind of that training that you're talking about.
So what kind of sorry, there's a little uh there was a bit of banging there, so just be a little careful with the I don't know what you yeah, it's okay. I've got an editor. Um um what was I gonna ask?
I don't know.
Hold on.
Training.
I just like literally left my head.
I know.
So we were talking
Yeah.
about
It was like
oh,
training.
I was gonna ask you. I know, okay. So can you give me like I don't know, give me a couple success stories that you've had of people who have come in and have seen progress using this kind of a approach?
Absolutely. One of my favorite stories, I have a lot of favorite stories, but one recent, I had athlete. She's, about my age, like 45, 47, had just finished doing the Festive 500 on Zwift that year, and then came to me, like, on her knees, so tired, and she's like, "Why am I getting slower?" And
Let's explain for people who don't know what that is. What
yeah,
that is, because she did that on Zwift.
mhm,
Oof. Okay.
yeah.
Explain to people what the Festive 500 is.
Yeah, so the company Rafa puts together every year between Christmas Eve and New Year's, 8 days to get 500 kilometers on your bike. And the idea is like to inspire people to go ride with people in terrible weather and be epic. So that's the goal, right? Um, I am not a huge fan of that goal for women over 40. I just think it from what I have seen with my own eyes, it just people get pounded into the ground and then take a month to recover from it, and it's really unfortunate, if they're not injured or sick, right? So, it's just too much, in my opinion, for most athletes who have jobs and families and social lives. So,
Right. It's the holidays and they're trying to like squeeze this in among all kinds of other things. Yeah.
yes. So, tons of volume, and was just on her knees and really frustrated. And she had already signed up for some gravel events. She was already living in Kansas. So she wasn't doing Unbound. She was doing the Flint Hills, Flint Gravel, something about Flint Hills and gravel. And it's before Unbound and a couple other races. I mean, so we're talking anywhere from 30 to 50-mile races, rolling hills of Kansas. And at that point, she's like, I don't even know how I'm going to finish the ride, let alone, train for it. So we started. We just was like, let's just back off and have a rest week and then see where we're at. And then I like to start again with 2 weeks of just get started with some body weight strength training because she hadn't already been strength training. And then just start maybe one day with a high intensity ride. And then on those weekends, let's keep it not a ton of volume. Let's really focus on amping up the recovery, let your muscles recover, let your body recover. And we focused a lot on getting enough nutrition, enough fueling to support that. So throughout the 12 weeks, we just again progressively built up. Um, and yeah, she came in flying, finished her gravel ride 4 miles an hour faster than she did the year before, and that was with the extra strong headwinds this year. Well,
That's huge.
it was huge, and it was just a testament to her work of starting strength training, focusing on pedaling skill, and then not being afraid to, go out there and ride a couple rides with other people. So she would partway through just be like, "Oh, I went on the ride with the group," and I'd be like, "Oh no," because she'd been training hard. I was like super worried that she got dropped and she was demoralized. She's like, "No, no, no, I was in the front group the whole time. That's unusual. I've never done that before." So she's just seeing more and more confidence. She finished that. Then she did a further ride, a race after this race. I don't remember the name of that one, but she's like, "I accidentally got on the podium. I didn't even coach. I missed it." And I was like, "When you get an accidental podium," she's like, "I had no idea." 'Cause, you kind of run in by yourself or she had no idea she
Yeah.
was up far ahead. So she's like, "I missed my podium, but I got on the podium." And I was like, "That's amazing. If you have an accidental podium, like, sign up for that." So those are, that was one of my favorite. Another favorite story, my eldest, most mature cyclist is a bike packer. She's 78. She started riding during COVID. And it was back, this story is from about 3 years ago, and it was back after COVID restrictions were kind of being lifted. And she was finally able to ride with her group again. And she was like, had been weightlifting. She hadn't really lifted much her whole life, but she got really into weightlifting. She focused on pedaling drills. She took a lot of rest, and the group ride. She's like, it always starts off with like 2 miles flat, and then we have this long mile hill climb, and then we continue on. And I was the first person at the top of the hill. And as the people were riding in, the group leader was like, "Oh my gosh, I thought you were on an electric bike. You were so fast." And she's like, "Nope, it's just me on my bike." So she's like, I had a burst of pride at just how incredible, specific training for this was. And she rocked her bike packing that season where she bike packed down the Oregon coast, I think. So with her group.
Wow.
Yeah, super impressive. So those are just two of my favorite stories.
Yeah. No, that's very, very cool. So when people come to you, do they have, I mean, you mentioned the first woman who was just like fatigued and kind of on her knees. Like, do is there a commonality in the people who come to you of like stuff that they're struggling with or stuff that they're working through?
I would say yes. So I would say the biggest complaints, if you will, would be I'm tired or exhausted. I feel weak, like I'm getting
Mm,
dropped from my group, or my coach just doesn't understand. Like I'm working with a coach, but they're, a 20-year-old man and they just don't understand. And so then it's really a combination of those three for the most part,
yep.
that are driving people to look for other options. So yeah, I would say by and large, the people come to me also, or when we start will have already got a plan in mind. So they're like, I'm going to do Leadville, or I'm going to do Unbound, or I'm going to do my local gravel ride. And then they have followed some sort of program before so that they understand what it is to work with someone. Because if you've never worked with a coach and then you're getting coaching, it's kind of like you have another mom. Like they're like, I don't really want to talk to you every day or every other day. Like I was like, yeah, I want to make sure you're doing okay. So I really do I would say the best with people who have those two things. They've worked with a program before and they have a specific end date, a specific thing they're working towards. And then the biggest thing I would say that people don't know that they don't know is actually to do around fueling, because most people never learned how to fuel properly for a bike ride or for endurance athletics in general, just because fueling has changed so much in the last 10 years. I mean, even from when I did
Boy,
Ironman,
has it.
it's changed, right? So I want to say that most people come to me saying, "Oh, I'm not fit or I'm not strong." And you're not fueling enough because that feels the same as not being fit. So those are the biggest, like, I would say places where people are coming from.
And where do you help them? Like, what does it look like to help somebody get their mind and then also get the practice of proper fueling?
Yeah, so I have to let them fail first. I hate saying it, but I can tell you everything till I'm blue in the face, but until you feel it. So we'll, for example, have a specific ride and be like, I couldn't hit the targets. Couldn't hit my threshold target or couldn't hit my whatever it was. And so my second question is, well, can you walk me through your fueling? And most people go, fueling? I mean, I know I was supposed to read that video, watch the video, do the worksheet. I mean, I had some oatmeal when I started, and then we had like a lunch stop, halfway through. So then it's like, okay, well, those feelings are tied to not eating enough. And so then we start this conversation around, well, what foods do you like? And I really make sure that people know that it's them driving the conversation, not me giving you a meal plan. I can give you examples, right? But
Right.
I want you to know that I'm not here to like change your diet. I want you to eat enough. And so we talk about protein options and we talk about what carbs they like. One of the big fights I have, I guess, to fight against, and not with people, but with society, is just like clean eating, right? And people are like, well, I had some trail mix and some jerky. And I was like, "No, it's not really going to help you hit those threshold targets because your body runs on carbohydrates and your brain runs on carbohydrates." And so we have a bit of conversation around that. So then it's really finding what you feel comfortable with, right? So I find that starting people on some pretty easy to digest sandwiches is a little bit of a middle ground between that and like simple sugars. So we'll start there. We'll repeat the workout maybe in 2 weeks, properly fueled, and it's like this huge light bulb goes off. The whole world shifts. I hit my targets, I was faster than ever, I set new Strava PRs, whatever. So that is, I wanna say, like, the way I kinda do it is like a little bit of kinetic learning. You gotta feel how bad it is and then feel how good it can be. And for the most part, that's how we do the learning of it, and then we refine it as we get closer to whatever the event is, right? Because in a, fueling in the heat is going to look different than fueling in the early spring. So
Yep.
it's very like, it's going to depend, right? But I start there and then we refine it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. And yeah, I mean the whole I hate the word clean. I hate that word when you're talking about food because what do we actually what does that even mean? It's um and there is a time and a place for a uncrustable white bread, like Smucker's jelly
Big time.
sandwich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that, and I would say even with the last, with kind of sports scientists moving the needle in the professional peloton, it kind of helps those of us who coaching in the not professional peloton to just feel like, what if I experiment with
Mm.
having more carbohydrates, right? And I would say, as women over 40, over 50, over 60, like we're all genetically very different as the way that we use our energy as our food as energy. And so what's going to work for me isn't necessarily going to work for the next person, but I try to encourage everyone to have their kind of scientific hat on and try and experiment with their own fueling to see how does 40 grams of carbs an hour feel? How does 50 grams of carbs an hour feel? And see if we can find their sweet spot. Um, and I know there's a lot of discussion around like, um, you know, simple sugars, raising your overall sugar level, that blood sugar overall. There's a lot of, I'm gonna say confusion out there right now. So I really try to keep it very personalized for each athlete, I guess. Overall, I think it's great to try on yourself. Like, what is going to work. So personally, I did that two seasons ago. Just like, I'm going to try 80 grams of carbs an hour and see how that works. And that ended up being my sweet spot. 90 couldn't do it.
Yep.
And 60, not quite enough by the end of the ride. So getting that, into the fourth hour of hitting some threshold targets. And I was like, I feel super fresh and I have dropped all of my friends. And I was like, I need to eat more. So it worked for me. And that's where I really try to tweak for those athletes as well.
Yeah, and you do need to train yourself to do that if you've never done that, right? You need to train yourself to eat while you're riding, get your gut used to it,
Mhm.
and it does make a huge difference. I mean, I personally find that I need some protein too in the mix, especially now. Like I can't just run on I know people who can run on just chews and goos and stuff, and I would not. I would fall to pieces. Like
Mhm.
I need a little protein in the mix I'm doing typically longer things.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah.
think that is so true, and that highlights just how individual everyone is. And so, yeah, when you're coaching women over 40, over 50, or even into their 60s and 70s, like keeping that open mind of like, first of all, letting them know it can get better and then letting them experiment with it. But yeah, I'm just not okay with letting people just think that they don't need to fuel or or they need to eat clean or those kind
Are
of
they afraid of eating? Do you have women who are just like, "Oh, that's a lot."
Yeah, I would definitely say that. Yeah, and it's a
Yeah.
lot of mindset work around it's okay to eat more. Actually, I share my story of, when I started eating more carbs, I actually got faster and lost 5 pounds. So that is not necessarily the same, but it can happen, right? So,
Yep.
it helps open up the conversation, and, it's a lot of undoing or unlearning, our societal norms. Yeah.
Funny how that works, 'cause I, that's that mirrors my experience too, it seems so counterintuitive, but when you're giving your body what it needs, it works better, and, like, the results are just better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I hopefully if I can inspire more women to not give up the bike, thinking I'm too old or I'll never get better. Instead, like, don't give up. Like, just try something different. Then, I'm a big believer. I've bought into we need more women on the start line. We need more women at every start line. So, I went to at the World Track Championships this year, and it's like 10-1 men to women, right?
Totally.
Yeah, same on gravel, it's like 10-2, right? So, I'm still just out here kind of that's my mission, more women on the start line.
We're all banging that drum. We're all here banging that drum. I'm banging that drum right with you.
Yeah.
So this has been awesome. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanna make sure that the audience hears about any of this?
Um, I mean, no, I don't I feel like we've talked a lot about what I do, how I help people. I just wanna inspire more people, like I said, to get at the start line and not be afraid to try something new, especially if you feel like you're getting stale. I'm sure you could say the same things as you've done so many
I
different
say it all the time. I say
Yeah.
this all the time. And I feel like if you also are finding yourself doing too much self-comparison, it is
Mhm.
also a good time to
Yeah.
try something different, right? Because it's kind of like when I was a mountain bike stage racer. I did that in years and years and years, and then at some point I just started burning out on it, and I was doing too much self-comparison, like, "Oh, I should be faster, I should be blah, 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 blah." And
Yeah.
it was stealing my joy in a huge way. So I just went over and I started doing gravel because it was fresh and it was something different. And
Mhm.
then when I sort of hit that point in gravel, I'm like, now what? And then I went back to triathlon and now I'm doing this ultra trail run. And there's so many ways to express yourself athletically and actively and also learn and grow. And to your point, when you get to something that's a bit new, you kind of have nowhere to go but up, and there's a lot of learning that you can do, and you can work on technique and efficiency and those things that can make you faster no matter like what your age is or any of that. So there's so many different ways to grow and to satisfy your active self.
Absolutely, and I think that even within cycling, I still
Yeah.
haven't gone heavy into mountain biking yet, so that's gonna be my next, my next doorway to open. I love it. What was I gonna say? Something about growing, and I think it had to do with like fueling, growing. I would say like just don't take the status quo as it's always gonna be this way, I think, and continuing to embrace the process and not necessarily the destination. And I think that that is going to help us age healthier because with cycling especially and endurance athletes in general, endurance athletics, that built-in community is so important when it comes to your brain, right? And connecting with other humans and then doing it while you're doing your sport, it just connects us with this glue that you don't get in any other way really. And then, inviting more people on more, whether it's trips or travel or, to go to the event, right? It's this huge, I don't know, important way we can keep aging healthily. And that's kind of my overall goal. Like, I want to be riding when I'm 99. I'm going to set a world record when I'm 99. Like, that would be amazing. So yeah, I want everybody to keep pushing forward. And I think echoing your like our movement of like it is a movement. We're not going to sit down anymore. Like we're going to keep pushing for more studies to be done so we know more about what to do and how to do it. I think that that is just a really great place in time right now. Um, and yeah, being strong. Like I love all the information coming out about just like muscle. is going to be your anti-aging like force, right? And so the more we can focus on helping women really embrace keeping muscle on their bodies and fueling for that is going to just be like, we're going to have tons of amazing 90-year-old women on bikes.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I'm very excited to see, and I say this all the time, that we don't know what the actual ceiling of our capability is, because this is the first generation to come up post Title IX, and with all of this information and understanding the
Yeah.
changes that happen and how to work with our physiology. Like, I see women in their 60s who are still like crushing it on their bikes, and it's just because of knowledge and the ability and this community. So
Yeah.
who knows?
Yeah. I love it.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your work and what you do. Appreciate you, and we'll make sure to put links to everything in the show notes so people can find you. And good luck on the track.
Thank you so much. It was really great to be here.
Well, that's our show. Come on back next week when I sit down with longtime friend of all things feisty menopause, Dr. Maria Luque. She has started working as a menopause coach for Respin, a women's menopause health service created by Halle Berry, and she is actually Halle's menopause coach. So when I heard that, I was like, I have to have Maria back in to talk about all of it, and it did not disappoint. So come on back for that one. And until then, as always, stay feisty. You've been listening to Hit Play, Not Pause, a feisty menopause podcast for active, performance-minded women. I'm your host, Celine Yeager. The show is edited and produced by the strong, talented, and amazing women at Live Feisty Media. Follow us on social media at Feisty Menopause. And please help us spread the word. Screenshot and share this episode on your social media channels with the tag @FeistyMenopause. Share the show with your friends. And please subscribe, like, review, and rate this show wherever you get your podcasts. Word of mouth and good reviews make it easier for other listeners to find. Thanks for listening, and as always, stay feisty.